Hope the recording started. Yes, right? Okay.
Yeah, I can see here notification.
All right. Okay. So today we will right away jump into this topic called the cultural transformation. Okay. So let me share some of the context behind the discussions. Okay, surrounding the particular discussion, and then I will get into the topic. Okay, so generally what I used to do is whenever I start on the cultural transformation, since it is more on the behavioral aspects, right, to a considerable extent, I generally used to start my discussion or presentation with this particular slide. Generally, I tend to use this slide only for a cultural transformation because it is more of a behavior centric approach, just to empty the mind and keep it free enough to observe the thoughts. Okay, that's the way I actually generally do it in the webinar also. And then probably I will begin with these pictorial representations, like when you ask who wants change, then everyone will be lifting the hand, but who wants to change, then no one. And if you ask who wants to lead the change, generally people will run away or walk away. Some kind of these pictorial representations, just to ignite the ignite that the thought process. Now, before I get into that topic, no, so generally, what thoughts come to your mind in terms of cultural transformation? Let me hear your perspective, and then I will customize the class a bit.
Okay. When it comes to culture,
Hmm.
I'll tell you what I had done.
Sure.
Okay, because I've not read so many things, but uh, in one of my assignment, I mean,
Hmm.
long ago, this was like few years back, 4 5 years back,
Okay.
I was into program management or delivery. So I
Okay.
was accountable for delivering things.
Hmm.
Okay, so similar to a program manager or a RTE role.
Hmm.
Now, in that particular case, and it was a multiple hat wearing role, not also RTE, but also you're responsible for delivery also. So in there, uh, I had a group of around 50 to 60 people. Okay, in
Mhm.
my, I mean some around 7 to 8 teams I had roughly, around about 50 to 60 people. Now, all of these 60 people or 50 to 60 people were coming from different vendors. For example, somebody came from a smaller vendor, another guys came from maybe a bigger vendor, someone else came from a multinational company as a vendor.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
Okay, and I was working for another networking based product company.
Okay.
So we were doing like a development work with those guys.
Hmm.
Now, in terms of when we have to deliver something in the agile way of working,
Hmm.
uh, we wanted that collaboration and zeal among people. But the work, most of the time the work was happening like, okay, somebody will give a task,
Hmm.
okay, and I will do the work and I will go back home because they're all contract employees.
Okay.
Everybody is a contract employee. There is no permanent employee. That is how we used to operate. 5% permanent employees, 95% contract employees.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. Now, with this kind of a culture of 95% or 90%, we will not be able to move forward,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
So
Correct.
what I started was I started doing this kind of some kind of a workshops wherein
Hmm.
I said that okay, I started some asking some questions. Let's say someone is onboarded into our team.
Hmm.
Okay, and let's say you are onboarded into our team. What would have been the best thing to happen if when we onboard you to our team? So then people will say the best thing is maybe to know about what we are working, to know about the product, to know about the way we are working. Maybe I am aware of Java, I am aware of Python, and I'm aware of all this, but how do I set up my sandbox? Is there
Hmm.
a proper process? uh, and who's going to be my buddy and various other things. So
Okay.
this was one item. The
Hmm.
second item was second conversation was around, okay, let's say you're all onboarded, you're working, and you come to the office and you're not able to solve a problem.
Mhm.
What do you expect from the office or the people around you? Okay,
Hmm.
or how do you want your day to be? Then they started saying that, okay, if I have someone who will come and help me, that is better. But currently when I go and talk to someone, they say, okay, I'm busy, I'm looking into this, and this is what is assigned to me. I need to integrate this by 5 p.m. or blah will happen and so on. So nobody is actually helping each other.
Mm-hmm. Got
Correct?
it. Okay.
They
Okay.
are working in their own silos, but they are part of the same team.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But if we have that kind of a environment where Balaji is helping me, I'm helping Balaji, and if there is a issue, we stop the work and get into fixing the issue, something like that, right? That is
Yeah.
one thing. If there is a severity one defect, what will happen? Okay, used to generally the trend is, assign it to the person who is writing that module code, and
Mm-hmm.
that guy is owning the module, but somebody else has done that and resigned from the organization and gone. Okay, there is no proper documentation as what has happened, and he has to investigate, burn the midnight oil. So again, he also does not know. Now he also needs some kind of a help. So
Correct.
these are couple of things which we identified. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
then we also discussed that in daily stand-up what should happen. Okay, I mean generally it is a status kind of a meeting, but if you bring a issue, what is actually happening? Then the people told that I'm only told to fix the issue. Okay, then why am I even doing the daily stand up to just tell you the issue? I can even ping you the issue,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, what is the outcome or benefit know to make you know the issue? I'll send you an email, right? So now we identify all of these things, and then we thought, okay, if there is a help required, can we help? Okay, within an hour of time or so, and but not like deviating from our own priorities. But
Mm-hmm.
if the other person's user story is more important or work is more important the other than this one, will rightly take the decision, maybe involve scrum master or product owner, what can let go and what can move, and provide that safety net and that kind of a core values within all the people.
Mm-hmm.
And then we also started adding some kind of a evening games in the our organization. So all these contract employees eventually started playing cricket, at maybe like 4 o'clock to 4:30, half an hour they just play cricket, just around by. Okay, so then there was a bonding, and people who were not involved within the same team, they started bonding, they started talking to each other. This is a kind of thing which I did as an experiment, and eventually, when I say there is a issue or there is a defect, I used to have more than 1% to look at that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay.
Okay. I mean,
Correct.
that's the benefit I achieved. Now, these teams were contract team. Okay, I lived with these teams for 1.5 years to 2 years. But again, this is my story about culture.
Okay. Okay. Good.
I mean,
So
I will
this.
not get into agile culture, mindset, and all that training we provide. I mean, that's a definitely I know all of that, but uh, on the ground level, this is one thing which I did. I thought I'll share with you. You can
Yeah.
give me what are your insights and feedback about this, and
Yes.
what you think really we should do in the real organizations now. Current
Mm-hmm.
situation is not like this. Current situation, I have
Correct.
only permanent employees, maybe 1% contract employee.
Correct, correct. Okay. So let me share my own perspectives, and then we will see how far we are also resonating at the end of the class. Okay, and then we'll see. Okay. Now the point is that no. So generally, when I start the cultural transformation, I generally start with this particular slide. Able to see it, right?
Yeah,
Let's empty the cup.
mostly.
Yeah. So generally for behave, because culture is more towards how do we respond to a situation, or how do we behave to towards a particular situation or a scenario. So I generally put this slide as let's empty the cup. Let us keep our mind open. Let us not have any preconceived notions as part of the flow of the class. So just to insist that point, I generally put this one, and then I will, for example, well, 1 second wait. I'm not sure why. By pressing enter, it's not navigating. Okay, this one. How change is perceived by us. So this particular pictorial representation, which is also used in the international this ICP ACC, Agile Certified Coaching, they generally started with these kind of pictures. When you say who wants change, everyone will lift the hand. But who wants to change, then no one. And who will lead the change? All the people will be empty. So something like this, just to know, ignite the thought process, and then we will get into some of the definitions, and then I will get into model assessments, all those things. Now, just from a common no just from a layman answer, culture is something, how does a particular team or group of people behave to a situation even though it is not mandated by the organization. Let's say, for example, I will give a simple example. In terms of a DevOps delivery pipeline, now the development team and operations teams may not gel well at the beginning. So what are generally organizations used to do? They will create a shared KPI between both the team, like
Mm.
mean time to resolve
Right.
MTTR, mean
MTTR.
time,
Mm.
yeah, and mean time between failures
Yeah.
MTBF,
MTT.
some kind of
Yeah.
a shared KPI. Now both the teams need to come together whether they like it or not, because they need to fulfill that KPI.
Correct.
Now my definition of culture is, even when there is no mandate from the organization to do something, if you are all pairing up together, if you are all binding up together to solve a common problem, then I say it is more collaborative culture.
Mm.
Something where things are not mandated, but still people come together for a common goal or a shared objective. It could be one of the definition of a culture,
Mhm.
because it is becoming a second nature by now, right?
Mhm. Right.
So something like that. So, see, like it is something like character is something what we do when we are not getting noticed,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
So when we are getting noticed in front of everyone, everyone will be conscious. But when you are in an isolated room and actually what are you doing inside that room? Let's say something like that. So my from my perspective, if someone want to do a cultural transformation, all my engagements where I worked, I never started with the cultural transformation, because see, I also agree. I also agree and resonate. Culture is close to the mindset. So one school of thought says you start with culture, then get into principles and the practices. But
Mhm.
my perspective is culture being a sensitive subject. I don't want to touch the culture at the beginning of the transformation. I want to start it with practices and go to the layer of principles, then focus on core values. From values, I need to go to mindset and the culture. So generally, I will insist my client or organization to have cultural transformation only in phase two or phase three.
Right.
Okay. So whether because if I want to put it in phase one, then accordingly I need to change the strategy.
Right.
So these things are
So,
called
right.
strategy.
So there are different school of thoughts, right? As you said,
Correct.
culture can happen early or later, but mostly later it is. Now, one more fundamental reason why it happens later is because
Hmm.
uh, what I did in my own experience, whichever I told, right,
Hmm.
that worked because I was the boss also.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
Okay, and everybody had to follow my order because they are all reporting to me.
Yeah, you have a
Okay,
positional
so
authority there.
positional authority. So that is a lean agile leader.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if I was a scrum master there or a RTE and a contract employee there,
Mm-hmm.
all of these talks would have been good. They would have agreed, but there would have been another boss who will come and say, guys, do this right now.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And how much you are working and how much you are working. Now, if you look at that information is coming from somewhere else. So
Okay.
without a structure, proper structure, your culture is failing now.
Mm-hmm.
That is why structure happens first, then the culture happens last. That is
Mm-hmm.
one school of thought. So that is what you are saying. So first you do your teams, structure, principle, everything, and culture happens last. Now, when you look at a couple of other school of thoughts, maybe David J. Anderson, Kanban, or something,
Mm-hmm.
they talk about culture happening from the beginning. It's a evolutionary culture.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that is another. So there's no right and wrong about it. But again, you need to know when to use what.
Mm-hmm. Correct. Yeah, and when to use what also depends upon the current level. Where are we? What is the time given for me to go to the target state of maturity?
Correct,
So many
correct. As
constraints,
to be, yeah, right.
limitations. Okay.
Correct.
So now what is my suggestion is that, so I will share my experience. Okay. So when I
Sure.
have done a cultural transformation for a US based banking client, generally we have done it in the phase two. So in phase one, what we have done, we started with the basic Scrum and Kanban, and for some of the LOBs, product lines or product groups, we have done the safe implementation. And once we have seen the scalable models and maturity to some extent, then we went to the next level of creating an outcome based plan. Once we have done something successful or rather tangible in the outcome based plan, then we started having something called as a cultural transformation. So from that perspective, what happens is that a sustained habit becomes a culture, and it is not a one person habit, it's a group habit, right? It's a habit which has been
Correct.
predominantly visible and felt among a group, okay, over a sustainable period of time is going to become a culture. So one way to do it is, how do you start new habits? To have new habits, we need to change the behavior of the person. To change the behavior of the person, we need to do something differently so that the thinking changes. Because only when the thinking changes and intensifies, the thinking will get translated to your behavior. Correct? Generally speaking. So can I introduce some new way of practices? So if you see into the Scrum and Kanban, all this ceremonies, the intrinsic nature of the ceremony itself is to bring all the people together as a team. But unfortunately, much of the places they do it only at a ritual, only as a ritual, without underlying without realizing the principles behind the practices. So why
Correct.
am I doing system demo? Because it is to validate a working piece of software at a program level. So understanding the principle and then resonating with the practices, it's of a paramount importance. So from that perspective, we will actually begin the journey. Okay, now this is my cultural transformation landscape when I formulated it. Now the point is, I think it took maximum 5 minutes of time for me to prepare this particular slide, because when I interacted with a particular client has already given clear things in a PDF. My role is to take the necessary things from the PDF and then put it in the landscape. More milk inside the container so that it neutralizes the decoction, something like that.
Right.
Okay, so we will take a pause here. See, my suggestion is that when we meet next class also, I like to continue with this cultural transformation on some of the slides and some of the things, and then we will go to the next topic later.
Okay, sure.
Okay, now what? We'll stop the recording and then we'll continue for a minute or two, 1 minute.